A very basic and well-known equation taught in basic algebra used to measure things. The Pythagorean Theorem was indeed a simple one to do. You just plugged it into a calculator. That's all you had to do, with a squared and then b squared, and then you'd have c, which you would then square, and you would have the answer. As simple as that. But what else was there? Well, Pythagoras was and always will be a very strange individual, one of the many philosophers that dabbled into math and astronomy and had quite a following. Born in Samos, Greece, within 569 BCE and dying around 575 BCE to 495 BCE, sources clashed with each other. In Medibang Paint Italy, Pythagoras' youth was very unknown. There are no records of it. But he did travel to southern Italy around the time Samos had a very tyrannical rule under Pythagoras, around 538 BCE. And from there he traveled to Egypt and Babylon for his studies. There he discovered and learned more and more about math, the universe, and Eastern spiritualism found in Egypt. Pythagoras was forced to move back to Italy around the time Persia took over Egypt and Babylon around 525 BCE. Pythagoras then, from there, taught his beliefs, and from there a cult gathered. This wasn't very rare, as many people who were talented in some sort of way or had a high belief were heavily followed in Greece and Italy both. Like how Antinous had his own cult even after his death. Pythagoras' cult was indeed a strange one, but they all valiantly aided in Pythagoras' discoveries in things like music, astronomy, philosophy, and most importantly, math. There were very odd beliefs just because of Pythagoras, and dubbed the Pythagoreans. They didn't eat things like beans, as it was a sin, and they were said to be vegetarians. They dabbled into beliefs about the human soul and believed something similar to Hindu beliefs, though I doubt there was any influence on that. The soul was trapped in a continuous cycle of death and reincarnation, and they were all taught that the only way to free themselves were through gaining higher knowledge of the universe through philosophical thinking and research, and that's possibly why Pythagoras dabbled into so many things. Another belief was that everything was connected to numbers. Reality was an expansive formula that they couldn't figure out. The sun, the stars, the earth, even our own minds, bodies, and being were formulas and numbers, everything except for our soul. And they believed, oddly enough, men and women were split into odd and even numbers. To quote Philadelus, the first Pythagorean to record anything of his beliefs, everything can be known as a number, for it is impossible to grasp anything with the mind or to recognize it without this. In fact, most physicists today follow this belief. Only the mathematical part, not all the others. That's very understandable. Pythagoras discovered Platonic solids, basically everything symmetrical 3D and basically dice. He claimed this as the existence of the first three solids, which doesn't sound that weird considering he religiously prayed to the Tetractys, a perfect mathematical mystical symbol. A very common example of this is, have you ever been at Cracker Barrel and seen those weird triangular wooden blocks with the pegs in them, and you'd have to play that game where you have to jump all the pegs and get rid of them? That whole thing is a tetractys. Basically, it all represented the number 10, a perfect number within their eyes. 1, 2, 3, 4, add it all into 10. Moving on from there, Pythagoras was a very great musician, having been a very skilled lyre player, as that was a very popular instrument at the time. And it was even assumed that he studied the relationship between musical pitch and string length. It's said that he discovered musical notes are indeed ruled by number ratios, but it's not entirely backed up as there's no records of it. There were two of his followers that even worked in the field of music. In fact, one of them discovered that if you half the length of a string, the notes changed by an octave, and even so much more. Moving on to astronomy, Pythagoras had his own belief system. He first started out believing that Earth was the center of the universe, but suddenly his mind was changed because he figured out that there was an orbit, everything was round, but there was a different orbit, his own solar system. Everything circled something called the center fire. There was an entirely different system. The sun was far off, the moon was right behind the earth, and there was a dark earth circling the central fire way too close. I guess it was supposed to be Mercury. No one really knows. Though he did believe that every celestial body was spherical. This was because he believed that the celestial bodies, being the sun, moon, stars, all the other planets, were indeed spherical. But then he figured if they were all spherical, then the Earth should be too, piecing it together. And from there, he figured out that they were spherical. Another huge reason that he believed everything was spherical was because they were the perfect shape, unlike triangles. They were so perfect that there was a harmony between them all, and that's why they orbited each other, including the stars. That's why everything moved and was in their own place. There was harmony. What exactly was that harmony and what did it mean? No one really knows. It's assumed to be the gravitational pull. It was represented as mathematical precision. No one understands what that means. There's no records of it. It's weird. He also discovered that the evening and morning star were Venus. Technically speaking, it's assumed from there that he discovered Venus. Other trivia about Pythagoras was that later on the cult had an abstinence thing. No skin could touch, even though Pythagoras was said to have died not a virgin. It's said that that was added in later on after his death. Another one being that he discovered something about vision, which is weird. He even figured out that vision resulted from light rays emerging from people's eyes. How light bounced off of objects, and that's how we could perceive those objects. Moving on to the cult, they had their other numbers, going back to 10 being the most sacred number of all. 8 was a number of justice. 7 was the number of wisdom. Everything about math was holy to them. And when they solved a new mathematical theorem, they would give thanks to the gods by sacrificing an ox. A little extreme, don't you think? In fact, his cult scared people, scared the Greeks. They thought it was freaky. There wasn't even a religion to it, as they thought. They didn't even think it as a philosophy. They thought of it as dangerous and vile. In fact, they even burned down his house for it. They chased him out of town, and they didn't like him for how he thought about numbers and everything and how his followers acted. Pythagoras himself and his followers believed that he was the son of Hermes in a past life, and he was gifted everything except for immortality, anything that he asked for. And because of this, he was told after his death, he would be reincarnated. And that's what he told his followers too. The Pythagoreans really did believe that he would be reborn. Somewhere out there in the world, there is a reincarnate of Pythagoras running around doing his own little thing. Let's just hope he's not getting freaky about numbers.